This is the final conclusion to a 4-part series. If you haven't seen part 1 through 3, I highly recommend it. So it's time to prepare for the big night, Halloween 2024. I'm going to be showing you some insider tricks to how I created some of these effects. In part 3, I said I was not happy with how the Plague Doctor stood out and he needed to be moved forward. I also realized that Kight Dullhan needed to be pulled forward. So I went on ahead and did that. The ground was not level here and I knew that I needed to shim up some of the base. We just used some 1x4s to go underneath the parts that were not quite hitting the ground. I then added the conduit that was used in previous parts just to make sure that he doesn't bounce up and down when the wind is blowing, which would snap those legs right in half. It's hard to trigger him from the sidewalk, but I found these really cool triggers from Spirit Halloween. And whenever somebody walks in between these two things, it will trigger off just like a step pad. There's a receiver and a transmitter. And the transmitter plugs right up into the tri-knee of the horse. And you can see how long this cord is. I really wanted that Plague Doctor to show up well. He's just too cool to be hidden. So I've decided to go ahead and put him at the edge of the patio where he is visually just easy to see and he looks great. I stood back, said yes, I love it. There's a few other folks to put out in the yard and then we'll be done with the yards. Staking them down into the ground, make sure the wind doesn't blow them over. And now I'm going to show you about the lighting. So instead of having a bunch of lights in the yard, I have decided to put some LED lights up on poles. These are 10-foot conduit poles. They're about $7 at the Home Depot. I spray painted them flat black. And I'm going to use some zip ties to go ahead and zip tie this light right onto the pole. Now that's to keep it from falling off of the pole. But I also use some tape to go ahead and wrap around to ensure that it doesn't slide up and down. So the zip ties just to keep it from falling off and hitting somebody in the head. The tape keeps it secure. I use some zip ties to go ahead and tie the cord down to the pole, routed that down to the bottom of the pole, and this thing was ready to be put back on the piece of rebar that is in the ground about 2 feet. I have 2 more of these light poles to put up. One on the other side of the driveway, which will be facing the werewolves. Because this is close to the street, I did put some caution tape on it so no one can run into it or pull into it with a car and say that they could not see it. Basically the same thing, attach that light with the zip ties, the tape, secure the cord, and put that thing back on the piece of rebar that is jabbed into the ground. Next up, I had a problem with Frankenstien and he just didn't look good in colors. Neither did the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I decided to use a flickering white light. The light fixture is clipped and taped to a piece of PVC, which is being held up by rebar in the ground. This gave a fantastic effect. I wanted white on these 2 folks and I really like the way that it turned out. Time to turn the power on. Instead of going and turning on power on everything and unplugging everything, I use a Wi-Fi. It's an Energizer Wi-Fi plug, and it has 2 outlets on the one plug. Now this can be controlled using a mobile app. So whenever I go into my mobile app, I just hit a few buttons, bam, everything is on. And you can turn off individual switches or turn them on, as well as set them up with a timer. So I have basically the whole yard starting at one time and cutting off at another time. It's a really cool way to just hit one button and have everything on. Now hitting that one button and having everything on and checking out that everything is working, guess what? That attracts folks, and here come the people. Now, were they happy? Just look at these faces. That makes me think, hey, I did a good job. So now that I've got everything all powered up, it's kind of time to just kind of go through and take some daytime pictures, make sure everything looks right. I'm pretty happy with the setup, waiting for nighttime to come, taking a glance through and making sure, yep, everything looks like it's good. Dullhan now really stands out well as that Plague Doctor. Now I want to set fog up to run across the front of the house where the projection window is, and I'm using a black piece of dryer vent and just cutting some slices into it, and I do this all the way down, and then I'm sticking that in front of my fog machine. I am not attaching it to the fog machine, I'm simply using a piece of tape to hold it close. You don't want this thing sitting on that fog machine. You need this gap. You can see that that worked out pretty well. This is just a 400-watt machine. It really spreads out that fog and just keeps it from being all dispersed into one place. Now after I got that fog machine up, I went on ahead and set up the fog machine underneath Kight Dullhan, which is going to be shooting straight up with the red light. And of course it's not dark, but right now I'm pretty happy with the way that it's looking. A neighbor of mine said to put a lantern onto the Headless Horseman. Great idea. So a few other little things to put out. Unfortunately, Home Depot had a 50% off sale and I just had to get these pumpkins. They're just too cool. So now it was time to go and work on the garage scene. When moving things out of the garage, this guy got caught up on something. He fell right on over and hit his head. I saved him for last because I didn't want to cry until now. I lifted him up, plugged him in, and guess what? Not a single piece of damage. And now let's set up that low-lying fog machine that I built in another video. You'll notice that I did add a gasket. It's a door gasket that I put around the top of this. There was a lot of leakage and I wanted to kind of minimize that. But we're going to go ahead and fill that thing up with water and plug in that mister and make sure that it's working. Yes, we have mist, and so we can go ahead and seal this thing up and turn on the fog machine and just make sure that it is delivering that low fog that I want in this scene. Yes, it is. It looks great. I'm happy with it. Time to move on. Now it's time to go ahead and get that projector running in the front room where my skeletons dance. I simply have a projector that is zip tied to a tripod. And so that is just projecting against this cloth on the window, and you can also see that the pumpkin is just sitting on a table in the other window. Now from the inside, this is what it looks like, but it's in a pretty amazing effect when you take a look at this on the outside. I'm really happy with the way that this turned out. I've gotten a lot of compliments from people, and projections are always a fun and easy way to do something different. So I have these Govee lights running across the front of the house. You may have noticed in previous videos the house was red. I've decided to change that to blue. I really like the effect of the blue. With my Govee lights attached to the upper portion of the roof, I can really change this to any color I want, but I found the blue to be fantastic. So I was playing around with different lighting effects. All of my lights have different type of colors and different type of effects. So I just wanted to kind of play around with that and decide what I was going to do. I like this flashing effect, but it is a little bit overpowering. While the fog machine is not on, you can see the scene in the garage, and I think it looks pretty cool. Now, behind the tapestry and inside the covered area of the garage is kind of like my actors hangout. It's a little messy right now because I've been working, but there'll be chairs and a table to sit down, have a beer, have a drink, get off your feet. I'm really happy with the way this light turned out on Frankenstien. I think he looks so much more spooky and white. The Witch's Cauldron has also been one of my favorites. I decided to use a white light because that's the brightest, and it really turned out well. Well, it's almost dark and it's time to go through and take a few more pictures and another walkthrough just to make sure that everything is triggering. I want to make sure that when you walk down the sidewalk that the guys that are close to the sidewalk trigger off from their sensors. Everything is looking good. Let me show you this fog machine on Dullhan and what makes it so cool. So when the fog goes up, not only do I have that red light which just enhances the look, but you'll notice that the fog comes running out the top of the shoulders, and I think that is just so cool. For my creepy guy sitting out on the patio, I did give him a girlfriend, and they look great together. So now that I have changed the tapestry light to red, Let me show you what that looks like. So this is the solid red, and it kind of matches what's going on in the covered area of the garage. And I think I've decided that I like the red better. It also does pretty well lighting up Art the Clown and the Pale Girl. And so this is the green light on the other side of the driveway. I was going to go with a blue, but it was a little bit subtle, so I have decided to go with a green for that. If you liked how things turned out, be sure to give me a like. Consider subscribing. Also, let me know what is your favorite part of my display. And until next time, stay spooky, my friends.